Have you ever seen a child celebrate his birthday alone, tucked away in a dusty attic, holding a crushed muffin like it was a treasure? On the morning Ethan turned 11, there were no candles, no songs, just silence and the sting of words. No child should hear, "You're no longer wanted here." That was the day he ran, into the woods, into the unknown. What happened next would change everything, but not in the way anyone could have imagined. Please subscribe to our channel. We're building a community where kindness is our most cherished and honored word. The morning light was pale and somber. Today was his birthday, yet there would be no festivity. No warm greetings awaited Ethan. He glanced at a small parcel wrapped in tattered cloth, a modest gift he'd crafted for himself in secret. It was merely an old journal he'd discovered in a dusty trunk, bound with a frayed cord, but to Ethan it was precious. A faint glimmer of comfort he craved on this solitary day. From below, the sharp voice of his stepmother, Victoria, sliced through the air, making him wince. Victoria had entered his life years ago, after Ethan's mother passed away. To the world, she was always impeccably poised, but Ethan knew the icy malice beneath her polished facade. When his mother was alive, Victoria had feigned kindness. After her death, that mask slipped, replaced by rigid rules, harsh reprimands, and a cold disregard for his suffering. Ethan carefully tucked the journal under his thin pillow. Victoria would disapprove of him keeping anything that brought him joy. His heart raced as he recalled last year's birthday, when he'd timidly mentioned it, hoping for a shred of warmth. Instead, Victoria's eyes had flared with irritation, and she'd snapped, "What's there to celebrate? You're just another year of trouble." The memory still burned. Downstairs, a door slammed. Ethan hurriedly smoothed his patched blanket and rushed to start his morning tasks. If he stayed out of sight, he could sometimes evade Victoria's anger. In the kitchen, he found her clutching a mug of tea, her fingers drumming impatiently on the counter. She didn't glance at him as he entered. "Have you scrubbed the stairs yet?" she asked coldly, no greeting offered. "Not yet, ma'am." "I'll do it now," Ethan replied quietly. He grabbed a rag and bucket from the closet and set to work, his slender arms aching as he scoured the floors. He didn't stop until they shone. Nearly 2 hours later, Ethan emptied the grimy water, hoping Victoria had left for her usual weekend errands. But as he glanced into the parlor, he saw her sorting through letters. Mustering courage, he spoke softly. "Ma'am, may I go outside for a bit? I've finished my chores." Victoria's eyes narrowed suspiciously. "Why?" she demanded, her tone tightening his chest. Have you ever witnessed a child mark their birthday alone, in the hush of a quiet woodland, with a crumbled pastry and a satchel heavy with shattered dreams? Ethan was only 11, but on that frosty dawn, it wasn't the chill that made him tremble. It was the memory of a door crashing shut behind him and the sting of words that declared, "You're no longer wanted here." A brisk autumn wind slipped through the splintered window pane of 11-year-old Ethan's small attic room as he perched on the edge of his worn mattress. The morning light was pale and somber. Today was his birthday, yet there would be no festivity. No warm greetings awaited Ethan. He glanced at a small parcel wrapped in tattered, as you see, schönes cloth, a modest gift he'd crafted for himself in secret. It was merely an old journal he'd discovered in a dusty trunk, bound with a frayed cord, but to Ethan it was precious. A faint glimmer of comfort he craved on this solitary day. From below, the sharp voice of his stepmother, Victoria, sliced through the air, making him wince. Victoria had entered his life years ago, after Ethan's mother passed away. To the world, she was always impeccably poised, but Ethan knew the icy malice beneath her polished facade. When his mother was alive, Victoria had feigned kindness. After her death, that mask slipped, replaced by rigid rules, harsh reprimands, and a cold disregard for his suffering. Ethan carefully tucked the journal under his thin pillow. Victoria would disapprove of him keeping anything that brought him joy. His heart raced as he recalled last year's birthday, when he'd timidly mentioned it, hoping for a shred of warmth. Instead, Victoria's eyes had flared with irritation, and she'd snapped, "What's there to celebrate? You're just another year of trouble." The memory still burned. Downstairs, a door slammed. Ethan hurriedly smoothed his patched blanket and rushed to start his morning tasks. If he stayed out of sight, he could sometimes evade Victoria's anger. In the kitchen, he found her clutching a mug of tea, her fingers drumming impatiently on the counter. She didn't glance at him as he entered. "Have you scrubbed the stairs yet?" she asked coldly. No greeting offered. "Not yet, ma'am. I'll do it now," Ethan replied quietly. He grabbed a rag and bucket from the closet and set to work, his slender arms aching as he scoured the floors. He didn't stop until they shone. Nearly 2 hours later, Ethan emptied the grimy water, hoping Victoria had left for her usual weekend errands. But as he glanced into the parlor, he saw her sorting through letters. Mustering courage, he spoke softly. "Ma'am, may I go outside for a bit? I finished my chores." Victoria's eyes narrowed suspiciously. "Why?" she demanded, her tone tightening his chest. I wanted to check the mailbox," he fibbed. In truth, he needed to retrieve a tiny muffin he'd hidden beneath a loose porch plank, a treat he'd bought with pennies he'd saved. She studied him, then waved him off with a curt, "Hurry up!" Ethan nodded and slipped outside. The autumn air was sharp, carrying the scent of wet earth. Kneeling by the porch, Ethan lifted the plank, his heart lifting when he saw the muffin still wrapped in a scrap of cloth. It was small, just a plain vanilla muffin with a dab of icing, but to him it was a treasure. Mum would have baked me a cake, he thought, a pang of longing for her gentle smile. He tucked the muffin into his jacket and replaced the plank, then checked the empty mailbox to keep his story believable. Ethan crept back inside, trying to be silent, but Victoria was waiting in the hallway, arms crossed. Before he could speak, her hand shot out, yanking open his jacket. Ethan gasped as she pulled out the cloth-wrapped muffin. Time seemed to freeze as the cloth fell away, revealing the slightly squashed treat, its faint icing smeared. Victoria's face twisted with fury. "What's this?" she hissed, her voice low and menacing. "It's a muffin," Ethan whispered, "for my birthday." Silence hung for a moment, then her eyes blazed with rage. "Your birthday?" she scoffed. "After all I do to keep you fed, you think you deserve treats? Did you steal for this?" "No, I saved some coins from chores," Ethan stammered, his heart pounding. "I just wanted—" Victoria cut him off, slapping the muffin from his hand. It hit the floor with a soft thud, icing smearing on the tiles. Ethan let out a small cry, watching his tiny joy ruined. "You selfish little thief," Victoria spat, advancing. "Hiding food like I starve you, lying to me. You know how much it costs to keep you." Ethan backed against the wall, fear surging. "I'm sorry," he choked out, tears blurring his vision. "I didn't mean to upset you." "Sorry?" she mocked, her voice rising. "I'm done with your tricks. If you want to act like a street rat, do it elsewhere." "Get out!" Ethan's eyes widened. "What?" he gasped. "You heard me," Victoria snarled, grabbing his arm and dragging him toward the door. "Out of my house!" Panicked, Ethan tried to pull free. "Please, I'll do better," he cried. Victoria flung open the door. A cold drizzle fell under a steel-grey sky. "Out!" she snapped, shoving him onto the porch. Ethan stumbled, the rain soaking his thin shirt. He turned back, pleading, "Please, Victoria, it's raining. I have nowhere to go." Victoria vanished inside, then reappeared with his tattered school bag, stuffed with his few belongings. With a sneer, she threw it at his feet, the contents rattling. "Take your junk and leave," she said coldly. "If I see you here again, I'll call the police and say you're trespassing. No one will believe you over me. You're nothing, Ethan." Her words cut deeper than the rain. Sobbing, Ethan clutched the bag, rain mixing with tears. Victoria slammed the door, the sound echoing as he stood shivering on the porch. For a long moment, Ethan stood frozen, hoping she'd relent. But the house stayed dark, the door shut tight. He was truly alone. Wiping his eyes, he hugged the bag and stepped off the porch, the wind tossing wet leaves around him. With nowhere else to go, he headed toward the nearby woods, where his mother once took him for walks. There might be a dry spot under thick branches to shelter for the night. It was a faint hope, but all he had. As he entered the shadowy forest, the trees whispered in the wind, and Ethan's steps faltered on the muddy ground. Night fell swiftly under the dense canopy. Cold and drenched, Ethan wandered deeper, each rustle or snap making his heart race. It felt like hours, though only one had passed since he fled. Desperate for shelter, he followed faint paths, rainwater streaming down his face, mingling with tears. A gust of wind knocked him off balance, and he tripped over a root, scraping his shin and twisting his ankle. Pain flared, and he stifled a cry, clamping a hand over his mouth. Limping forward, his ankle soon gave out, and he collapsed against a massive pine, trembling with cold and exhaustion. Huddled under the pine's branches, Ethan curled up, clutching his bag. Shivering, he whispered, "Mom, please help me." The night answered only with dripping rain. Then faintly a man's voice called out, growing closer. Ethan's heart leapt, rescuer or threat. He held his breath as a flashlight beam cut through the trees, landing on him. "Hello," came a deep, cautious voice. A tall figure emerged, rain dripping from his coat. In the light, Ethan saw a kind face, etched with concern, belonging to a man in his 50s, grey streaks in his hair. "What are you doing out here alone?" The man murmured, kneeling slowly. "It's okay, I won't hurt you." His voice was warm, soothing. Ethan tried to speak, but only a shaky breath escaped. The man's eyes softened with worry. Setting down the flashlight, he removed his thick coat and wrapped it around Ethan's trembling shoulders. The warmth enveloped him, and Ethan sighed in relief. "You're hurt," the man noticed, seeing Ethan wince. "Your ankle, may I look?" Ethan nodded faintly. The man's hands were gentle as he checked the swollen ankle. "It's sore, isn't it? We won't walk on it." "I'm Samuel Carter," the man said, meeting Ethan's eyes. "I live nearby, just past these woods. Let's get you warm and dry." Samuel Carter, Ethan had heard the name in town. A wealthy man who kept to himself in a grand estate. Ethan nodded, teeth chattering. Samuel smiled reassuringly, then lifted Ethan effortlessly. One arm under his knees, the other behind his back. Ethan clung to him, the warmth of Samuel's coat and steady heartbeat calming his fears. Samuel grabbed Ethan's bag and began walking, his flashlight lighting the way. "You're safe now," Samuel murmured as he carried Ethan through the woods. "We'll be home soon." Ethan wanted to thank him, but exhaustion overtook him, and his eyes fluttered shut. In a faint whisper he managed, "Thank you." Samuel's arms tightened protectively. "You're welcome," he said softly. Minutes later, they emerged from the woods, approaching Samuel's manor. An older woman, lantern in hand, hurried onto the porch, Eleanor, Samuel's housekeeper. She gasped at the sight of Ethan, but Samuel's calm look reassured her. "He's okay, just tired and hurt," Samuel said quietly. Eleanor held the door as Samuel carried Ethan inside, the manor's warmth enveloping them. He brought Ethan to a guest room, where Eleanor pulled back the covers on a soft bed. Samuel gently laid Ethan down, and the boy stirred, whimpering until Samuel's hand rested on his shoulder. "Shh, you're safe," Samuel whispered. Eleanor fetched towels and a first aid kit, and together they dried Ethan's hair, cleaned his scrapes and bandaged his ankle. Faint bruises on his arms caught Samuel's eye, his jaw tightening. "The poor lad," Eleanor murmured, brushing Ethan's hair back. Samuel shook his head, his face grim. "His name's Ethan. His stepmother threw him out tonight. I found him freezing in the woods." Eleanor's hand flew to her mouth, outrage and sorrow in her eyes. How could anyone do that to a child? Samuel didn't answer, but his expression spoke volumes. He tucked the quilt around Ethan, checking his forehead for fever. "He'll sleep now," Samuel said softly. "I've called Dr. Ellis to check him tomorrow." Eleanor nodded. They dimmed the lamp and left Ethan to rest, his face peaceful in sleep. Ethan woke to soft sunlight filtering through curtains, a warm quilt around him and a fireplace crackling nearby. For a moment he thought he was dreaming. The cozy room, filled with books and the scent of cedar, was unfamiliar. His ankle was bandaged and he wore clean pajamas. Memories of the night flooded back. Victoria's anger, the rain, and Samuel Carter's rescue. A knock at the door startled him. An older woman with warm eyes entered, carrying a tray. "Good morning, dear," she said. "I'm Eleanor, Mr. Carter's housekeeper. How are you feeling?" "I'm okay, ma'am," Ethan replied shyly. Eleanor set the tray down, oatmeal, toast, and juice, and helped him sit up. The food's aroma made his stomach growl. "Eat up," she encouraged. Hesitant at first, Ethan took a bite, the warmth comforting. As he ate, Eleanor explained how Samuel found him and called a doctor. "He stayed with you all night," she said. Ethan's eyes widened. "I don't know how to thank you both," he murmured. "No need," Eleanor said, patting his hand. "We're just glad you're safe." Just then Samuel appeared at the door. "Good morning," he said, relief in his eyes. "How's our guest?" "Much better," Eleanor replied, taking the tray. "She left them to talk." Samuel sat beside the bed. "You scared me last night," he said gently. "How's the ankle?" "It hurts a little, but it's okay," Ethan said. Samuel nodded, then asked softly, "Is there anyone I should call?" "Family?" Ethan's face fell. "My mom died when I was young. My dad passed 3 years ago. I lived with my stepmother, Victoria. She threw me out." Samuel's expression hardened, but his voice stayed kind. "Did she hurt you, Ethan?" Tears welled as Ethan nodded. "She'd lock me in the basement or hit me when she was mad. Last night, she got angry about a muffin and told me to leave." Samuel's eyes closed briefly, pained. "That was wrong, Ethan. None of it was your fault." Ethan wiped his eyes, the words soothing. "You're safe here," Samuel said firmly. "You can stay as long as you need. You won't go back to her." Ethan's eyes lit up. "Really?" "Really," Samuel promised. "We'll figure it out together." A small smile broke through Ethan's tears. "Thank you, Mr. Carter." Samuel patted his shoulder. "Rest now. Martha and I are downstairs if you need us." He pointed to a bookshelf. "Plenty to read if you're bored." With a final smile, Samuel left, leaving the door ajar. Ethan sank back, feeling safe for the first time in years. That evening, he hobbled downstairs on crutches to join Samuel for dinner. Eleanor served warm soup and bread, and they ate in comfortable silence. Samuel explained he'd contacted Ethan's school, easing his worries. Ethan shyly asked if Samuel grew up here. "Not quite," Samuel said, glancing at a portrait of a smiling woman and a young boy. "This was my late wife's family home. We moved here after our daughter Lily was born. They passed in an accident 5 years ago." Ethan's heart ached. "I'm sorry," he said. Samuel nodded. "It was hard. I closed myself off after. Having you here, it's brought warmth back to this house." Ethan's eyes stung. "I'm glad I'm here too. I feel safe." Samuel smiled. "You are safe for as long as you need." Eleanor brought tea and cookies, teasing Ethan about his polite manners, making him laugh. They lingered, talking about books and sharing light moments. That night, Ethan slept without fear, grateful for the warmth and care. Down the hall, Samuel stood by his window, holding a photo of his wife and daughter. For the first time in years, he felt hope. The next morning, Detective Paul Evans, a friend of Samuel's, met with them. Ethan recounted Kristen's abuse, his voice steady despite the pain. The detective took notes, his face grim. "You're brave, Ethan," he said. "With your story and the doctor's report, we can charge Victoria. Will I have to see her?" Ethan asked nervously. "We'll try to avoid that," Evans assured. "You'll stay with Samuel for now, under a protective order." Samuel added, "I've got a lawyer working on your custody." Ethan exhaled, relieved. The detective asked about Ethan's father's death. "It was sudden," Ethan said. "Dad collapsed one night. Victoria sent me to my room and said she'd call for help, but he was gone when the ambulance arrived." Samuel frowned. "James was healthy." "That's suspicious." Evans nodded. "I'll look into it." Days later, Victoria stormed into the manor furious. Samuel blocked her path. "Where's Ethan?" she demanded. "He's safe, and you're not allowed here," Samuel said firmly. Victoria sneered, trying to push past, but Samuel stood firm. "You're pathetic, trying to replace your daughter with my stepson," she spat. Samuel's temper flared. Better than leaving him with someone who hurt him." Ethan, watching from the stairs, froze as Victoria's eyes locked on him. "You think you're safe?" she hissed. Samuel ordered her out and she left, vowing revenge. That night, Samuel sat by the fire, troubled. Eleanor reassured him, "You're what Ethan needs." Ethan appeared, saying, "You're not selfish. I want to stay with you." Samuel hugged him tightly. "I want you here too, son." Days later, Detective Evans returned with news. Ethan's father had left everything to him, but Victoria hid the will, taking the inheritance. She'd also been linked to a suspicious death in a prior marriage. "She's fled," Evans said, urging vigilance. That night, Ethan woke to Victoria's hand over his mouth, a knife at his throat. "Get up," she whispered, dragging him toward the door. Samuel, alerted by a noise, appeared in the hallway. "Victoria, let him go," he pleaded, hands raised. She pressed the knife closer, her voice shaking. "You ruined everything." As she edged toward the stairs, police lights flashed outside. Ethan stomped on her foot, breaking free. Samuel tackled her, the knife grazing his arm. Police burst in, arresting Victoria. She screamed. Samuel held Ethan tightly. "It's over," he whispered. Medics treated Samuel's wound, and Ethan clung to him, safe at last. 3 months later, Ethan testified at Victoria's trial, recounting her abuse. The evidence, his injuries, neighbor accounts, and her actions, was undeniable. Victoria pleaded guilty to abuse, assault, and fraud, receiving a 30-year sentence. The judge praised Ethan's courage. As Victoria was led away, she glanced at him with fleeting regret. But Ethan looked away, feeling only relief. Outside, Samuel hugged him. "It's truly over, son." A year later, in a family courtroom, Ethan's adoption by Samuel was finalized. "You're my son now, Ethan Carter," Samuel said, tears in his eyes. Ethan beamed. "Best decision ever, Dad." They visited Ethan's father's grave, laying flowers. "I'm safe now, Dad," Ethan whispered. "Samuel's taking care of me." A breeze stirred the trees, and Ethan felt peace. Later, he asked to visit Lily's grave next, to reassure her Samuel was okay. Samuel hugged him, touched. Back at the manor, Ethan took Samuel's hand. "I love you, Dad." Samuel knelt, eyes shining. "I love you too, son. Welcome home." Their bond, forged through pain, was unbreakable, a family at last. Ethan's story reminds us that a single act of compassion can change a life. How many children go unnoticed, carrying silent wounds, waiting for someone to say, "You are enough"? If this resonates with you, what brings you solace tonight? A cozy blanket, a warm drink? You're not alone. This space holds your stories, your voice. Let's keep listening for the quiet ones. Their songs are the deepest.